Thanks for coming out. I just want to come today, talk a little bit about what we're trying to do with design at Rhinegeist. It's a big part of what we do, a big part of our identity and how we're trying to make a mark with the company going forward. And we have a talented team of designers back there sitting in the upper deck. So without further ado, we'll take it away. This is my son, Henry. He's standing in Paris. I took him to Paris over Thanksgiving just because he's 13, and I figured, this is probably my last chance to do it before he wants to spend any amount of time with me. And this is leading to a story that I want to use to kind of set up how we think about brand at Rhinegeist. So this is The Birth of Venus. It's painted by Alexandre Cabanel. Saw this when we were at the Musée d'Orsay in Paris, and I was really struck by this painting because at the time this is what was considered beauty. This is what was considered, good work, the quintessence of beauty. Venus is born from the foam. She's got cherubs flying above her. So this was what was considered perfection at the time. It was their concept of idealized beauty. Contrast this with Olympia by Edouard Manet. They literally have these paintings across from each other, facing each other at the museum, which is really important context. And why is that? It was painted the exact same year, 1863. What I love about this painting, in contrast against the other one, is that it's the defiant stare of a prostitute, not a goddess. What's really interesting about it is she's got a servant bringing her flowers. So those flowers are probably from a male of some sort. And what I like about this is Manet is trying to capture the essence and the authenticity of the person, right? So that previous painting was the concept of perfection and the concept of beauty. But this one is the artist really trying to dig in and tell us, what is this person really like? And oh, by the way, this prostitute is an interesting person, and it is someone that you can spend time with, at a gallery and really try to get to know. Obviously, work like that was hugely controversial at the time, and the people who guarded the gates of art, the salon, pretty much dismissed this work. But we know today that this work is great work and, something that we can, look up to. When I saw this, I was like, oh, that's what we're trying to do at Rhinegeist, right? We're trying to do work that brings out the realness and the humanity and the real personality of the people that work here. And in some regards, I feel like the previous world I came from was more of this traditional concept of brand building, where it's about perfection, and it's about making sure all of your assets are perfect, and they're executed the same way everywhere. Whereas I think for us, we're trying to capture more of that essence of a moment in time. And this moment in time at this place that's growing rapidly, and there's really interesting people at, and we want to share that with the world. Why do we do that? Because there's a lot of modern society that's kind of boring. Working in cubes, having houses that look like all the other houses, and enter craft beer, right? And craft beer brands. And you go to the grocery store, you go to the craft beer shelf, and it's exciting. There's lots of different colors, and there's textures, and there's typography, and there's illustration, and there's this explosion of different stuff. And you see men and women going to the craft beer shelf and just kind of doing this for 20 minutes. I did consumer research for toilet paper in my former life, and the average time to purchase is 3 seconds, right? Because nobody cares about toilet paper. You get the one with the quilt or the bears, right? But craft beer, it's 20 seconds. Why? Because it's fun and it's cool and it's interesting and there's lots of personality. So we want to have personality too, and that takes a lot of hard work. You would hardly believe how difficult it is to place a figure alone on a canvas and to concentrate all the interest on this single and universal figure and still keep it living and real. It's really hard to design authenticity. It takes a lot of work. We spend a lot of time doing this. We sweat the decisions. We spend way too much time critiquing Instagram posts. Why? Because we want it to feel natural. So when I started at Rhinegeist, this is kind of where we were, right? Really great parts and pieces, really great assets, but really, really consistent. There's nothing wrong with it, but it was lacking a little bit of personality. This is kind of the stuff you would see around town. And I remember when I took the job, I had friends say to me, they're like, dude, you're just going to be executing templates, right? You're just going to be executing taproom posters and tap takeovers and doing posters like this. It's like, well, I don't know. I think we could do some stuff. This is the world I come from, right? Pyramids and wheels and charts. And sometimes it makes me feel insecure because we don't have a lot of that stuff, right? We don't have a lot of our wheels and charts and pyramids and things. So what we try to do is we try to really be choiceful and live by principles, right? Because people live by principles. I make principles about how I want my children to be upstanding individuals. And we feel like living by principles, like for our brand character, for example, helps us keep things, fluid, right? Because so long as we're living up to our principles, there's a lot of work that can come forward within that. We have our design principles, hopefully you can read them, where we don't have a ton of guidelines. We don't want to have a ton of guidelines. We want to leave it kind of open to evolve and change. And what we don't want to do is have a brand that is boring and static. So we say things like less is always more, drive for bold and iconic, visual clarity is a critical statement, design should make you feel something, and then making 20th century design feel modern. Those are sort of our kind of design guiding principles. So how does that come to life? Here's a bunch of samples from our Instagram. I think we do a really good job of showcasing the people that work at Rhinegeist, because there's a lot of really interesting people, and if we just showcase them, that works out well for us. Really trying to push how we hero our products. We don't want to just take pictures of things and have them just be a throwaway camera picture, but we really want to try to push it. Just because we want it to feel spontaneous and real doesn't mean we want to just do whatever. All of Rhinegeist is us doing it. We don't really hire anybody. It's all us and our team and our photographers. So you can really see us showcasing our people. You can really follow us and see our development creatively. We're figuring things out, and we're better and we're better, and we get better with each project. And you can really see that in our work. Crashing crashes, or crushing crashes. Bunch of cool people drinking truth. Everybody loves truth. So we're super proud of all this stuff. Hopefully I don't go over. All right, this is Great American Beer Festival. I'm going to share a little case study here that kind of shows the spirit of Rhinegeist. Everybody's familiar with what Great American Beer Festival is? Just a massive beer festival. And for the first few years of the company, we, like a lot of people, go and have a table and hang a vinyl banner. And a couple years ago, we said, I think we're to the point now where we can make a bigger statement. And it isn't because we're big or anything like that. It's just we have the creative energy to want to say something about ourselves to that group of people. So what we did is we got together and we looked at a bunch of different points of inspiration. Origami roof structures, shoshugi ban, which is Japanese burnt wood that one of the owners is into. And we have an architect that is a woodworker that works on our staff. And that's the crazy thing about Rhinegeist, is there's all these millions of people, well, hundreds of people, that have these crazy different backgrounds. We have artists, we have graffiti artists, we have all these different people that we can constantly work with and reach out to and do amazing things together. So we started sketching concepts, we did some 3D models, we did some sketches. And this is our woodworking team. Right now, they're building a food kiosk in our tap room. It's literally going to be food service, and these people work for us, or not for us, they work with us. And anytime you talk to them and you want to have an idea, they're super stoked and they just want to see it be made. Well, that's the culture of the company, right? The culture of the company is just a bunch of people coming together and trying to push things and do cool stuff. Shoshugi ban is burnt Japanese wood, so there they are burning wood that's going to go on the side of this thing. Putting it together at GABF at the festival. And then that's what it looks like. It's almost like we're creating modern architecture. And the best part about this, and the reason why it's the best symbol, one of the best symbols of what we do, is we did it all ourselves. We had, everything was us, our idea. It happened internally. We did it all ourselves. We found the people internally to make it happen. We quoted this out with an exhibit company, and it was 10 times the cost. And then so we're just all right, well, let's just make it. And we did. Everything down to like custom tap handle stickers, to screen printed flags that are supposed to look like a Japanese sushi bar or something. I don't know. And we won a silver for Quid, which was cool. And then that's what it looks like with our people in it. So typically creative process kind of works like this at an agency or other place where you get briefed on the problem, then somebody goes away and creates strategy, and then they come back and they're like, hey, this is the strategy and the creative brief. Then you get into the work and you call in the designers, right? And the designers take the work. We have tried to work that way, but it doesn't really work for us. Like, we work more like this. Hey, what's the problem? What do we want to make? Like, what kind of beer do we want to make? Okay, jump in and go do a bunch of work, right? And then we just blast out all kinds of strategic options. And you can't do that unless you've got really smart designers, right? We have really smart designers who are very strategic. So we have all these strategic options through the process of designing that we then look at and say, okay, what is the strategy that this is revealing? And that tends to work for us. So we get to the strategy through the work. We have to embrace ambiguity and chaos. Like, designers have to be okay with that. We fill the wall in understanding that a lot of the work that we do is going to die. It's created to die. It's created to prove things wrong as well as prove things right. So you got to be tough as a designer to live in that world. Everybody plays. Interns all the way up to our most senior designers. Why? Because our interns are going to be senior designers someday. And the way that you learn how to do work is by seeing other people do work and saying, oh, I see that that's what's resonating. So we don't silo people and say, only you're going to do this. Now, this isn't every project. Some projects, people have to take it and run with it and get the work done. And then number 5 is really important. We work with, not for, our internal partners. So when we're working with Bob and we're working with Bryant, it's a partnership. It's a partnership because we're co-workers. Like, this isn't go talk to the agency and whatever the client says is what we're going to do. Like, we have real points of view on our product positioning and our strategy that get heard, and it shows up in the work. All right, here's a brief. Literally, this was the brief. We want to do a lager, the kind of beer you keep in your refrigerator. That was it. Like, that's all we got. Okay. So what did we do? We pumped out a bunch of work, right? And we did even more stuff than this. This is just a sampling. Hitting designs, trying different things. What if we try this? What if we make it gold? What if we make it old-timey and feel like an old beer brand from the 50s? And then, narrowed to 3 different pathways. This is the really important part, is that we look at the work and we say, what is this telling us? Versus like telling the work what it wants to be. First option there is classic and iconic. I've always kind of liked that one, actually. The second one is everyday elevated. And the third is familiar but new. Like, trying to make like a new brand feel old but new. And then this is what we ended up with. So that's the Cheetah that you buy at the grocery store today. Everybody buy Cheetah, because my kids need you to.
How do you choose the names?
It's real fluid, man. We actually do have a naming committee that is people from all over the company. So, it's about creating as many options as possible, but then sometimes it just comes down to like the owners being like, this is what we want to do. But Bob and Bryant, one thing I didn't mention in the part where I was talking about culture is that they very much want this to be our company. Like, we're moving to employee ownership. That's a real thing that not everybody totally understands about Rhinegeist. So they want us to act like owners and own the decisions that we're making. And that's hugely empowering for designers, because designers aren't always used to being owners, right? We're makers, but we always make it for somebody else. Well, in a small way, we are making this for ourselves, and that's something that we kind of really ask our designers to channel. So created this can, and then we said, well, shit, what is this thing? Like, normally this is the kind of stuff that happens before the can, but we're like, what is this telling us? And we said, okay, what if this thing is retroactive cool? And this is literally a board we threw together in like 10 minutes. And we didn't obsess it, we didn't overthink it, we just made enough to like move forward and move the work forward and inspire everything going forward. Because speed for us is kind of everything. making cool stuff like this tap handle. That tap handle is like $10 more than tap handles usually cost, but I showed this rendering to Bob and Bryant. They're like, that's great. And that's how simple it is. And then, what does this brand start to look like in social media and out in the world? And we have our Cheetah All-Stars, which is our amateur basketball team, wink, wink. And then, of course, Cheetah Man, which is just somebody screwing around on the production floor. And then this is one of my favorite things ever, because here's the thing, like, we're a brewery. We got into this because we wanted to make craft beer and like have beer nerds love us. But it's like, now we're getting to this point where we have to promote ourselves because we're a 100,000 barrel brewery. So the point here is like, screw it, let's give away a gold lawnmower. So this showed up in Kroger and was successful, I assume, got us placements in Kroger, because Kroger makes you compete for placements and all these things. So we took one of our fun, awesome people and gave him a captain's hat. I'm sure people in this room know Rom. I'm just gonna put it out there. And this couple in Tennessee got a awesome gold lawnmower. Truth, been around since the beginning, so one of the things that we designers have pushed for is give this thing like a personality and give it some, like, make it an actual brand, not just a can with a green stripe on it. So, we did a mood board to work to define like what makes truth. Didn't spend a ton of time on this, like didn't overthink it, just enough to give some inspiration to guide ourselves going forward, which leads to all this stuff. So you're starting to see this trickle out into the world. And really what we want is we wanted to define this as a timeless beer. Truth is an amazing beer. Like, Truth will always be good. It will always be a great example of a great IPA. So we want that to show up through the work. Now we're just gonna look at some cool stuff. Roar, this was something where we worked with the local tattoo artist to make it feel like a tattoo that you might get on your body. Brittle Brain, this is something we did the time that we had a giant brontosaurus or something in our tap room. The Cincinnati Museum Center was undergoing renovation, and they came to us and they're like, hey, we have this dinosaur skeleton. Do you want to have it in your tap room? And we're like, okay. So we turned it into something, and we designed a beer around it, and we had really cool posters and t-shirts and things like that. This was our 5th anniversary. It's one of the few things in here that I worked on. It's crazy because it's like you have this team and it gets to the point where you just stop doing stuff because they're going to do it better than you will anyways, and it's kind of cool to see everybody run with it and makes my job easier. Lots of meetings though. This was inspired by an old Winnebago because our theme for that year's anniversary was family vacation. So we tricked out the tap room to look like we were going on a family vacation to all these different destinations around the country. And this was the beer we released for it. Cordially Yours. This is something that came out, I don't know, about a month ago. Might be out now still, actually. You can probably find this in bottle shops. But this is where I love seeing us pull away into trying to create modern art. Finding different points of inspiration within the brand that aren't just stripes and the logo, but almost trying to create something that feels like it could have been done by a modern artist in the 60s. But Cordially Yours is a beer that tastes kind of like an old fashioned. So Liz got inspiration from all the ingredients of an old fashioned, and this is what she came up with. This is something that Joe has worked on. This was a beer that we did for our Rare Beer Fest as a special giveaway, and we're just like, let's just murder this out. That was fun. Hazy series. We could have done a hazy beer in a 12-ounce can and put it in every Kroger and made a ton of money, and arguably we should have as a business. But we wanted to take it as an opportunity to reflect the exciting things happening in the beer world, where breweries on the East Coast and West Coast, they're releasing 4-packs of 16-ounce cans with amazing labels on it. And we're like, well, we want to do that too. So each one of the designers took one of these and had a different point of inspiration from the name. So for example, Alpha Squid, it feels like abstract art that feels squid-like in character. Zeta Puffer, those feel like little fishes kind of puffing up against each other in a fish tank. Beta Guppy feels like scales on a guppy. And then Kappa Flounder feels almost like camouflage, because flounders are kind of gross and they just camouflage with the lake floor. But that was a lot of fun. And then now we're getting into restaurant branding. Everybody, if you haven't heard about it, come on down to OTR Chili. That's the restaurant that's going to replace Sartre. But we got to do fun, we basically did a corporate identity for this. where we're branding a restaurant all of a sudden. We got to do cool things like up here in the top corner, this is like one of my favorite things we've ever done. At the top cut off, it says, "Are your kids talking about chili?" And then it says BRB, beans, real beef, IDC, I dig Coney's, because it's like texting speak. I think the idea here is to create chili, but like a little bit nicer with better ingredients. And then there's going to be burgers and shakes and things too. So come on out, everybody. So I'm going to take a little side trip and talk about Saturday Night Live a little bit. I was thinking, like, how do we talk about what we're doing here? Like, how do we think about creatives and creativity? We're really like Saturday Night Live, where it's 40 years old, but the concept of Saturday Night Live is timeless. And the way they stay fresh as a show, hopefully, is they cycle in new talent, and then they let their talent lead them. If I could say anything about like how we think about how we work with designers and everything, is like they're there to tell us. They're there to keep us fresh. They're there to bring the solutions. And I don't think enough creative places do that well enough, and that's something that we're really trying to do. So styles change, seasons change, but if you have enough young, hungry, smart people, they're going to take you where you need to go. And that's the point of the brand. And that's the biggest thing I want to say, is that beer's changing and we're building it to change. And that's why design is so important at Rhinegeist, is these designers are on the forefront of like always looking over one step into the future, and they're going to take us there. So this is our design team. They're sitting in the upper deck over there. Super proud of the work that they do. We wouldn't be having this conversation if we didn't have them, and them specifically. This is something that Clara has worked on recently. She really wrapped her arms around, how do we up our game on our launch graphics for when we introduce new markets? And we just introduced like 4 new markets this year. So this is work that just got done just a little while ago. And what I love about it is that it's such a sophisticated take on where we can take illustration, which has always been a real challenge for us. But this is one of the first times that we could get everybody to say, okay, yeah, that feels like how we would do that. So it's a major step forward for us. This design for Nitro, Liz worked on this and styled this entire photo shoot. She came up with the idea of treating this almost like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And all it is just stripes and colors and typography. But when you see it, you can see the idea in there. And it's really sophisticated work. And can you treat beer like a dessert? Is that interesting? I don't know. Our barrel-aged work, this is some of my favorite work that we've done. I've said like 3 things are my favorite, but I'm gonna say that about everybody's work. I think up until this point, we had sort of treated our barrel-aged as being like, okay, here's a label, and it was a little dusty. But now this is creating work that calls attention to itself. And we sweat the details on this. It's digitally printed and foil stamped. And it isn't like the foil stamp that gets applied by a digital press. It's like real foil stamping with a die. Because those details are important to us. The reason why these details are important to us is because this is some of the best beer that we make as a company. And all we're trying to do in the design group and in marketing is just shine a light on the good stuff that the other people are doing. They don't understand that. They don't understand that all we want is for them to be successful and for this stuff to get tasted. That's what we're trying to do. Chelsea worked on the Wanderbus event activation. This is us taking over a corner of a festival up in Columbus. And what I love about this is that, again, our designers are leading us into the future. We got to listen to the young people and let them take us where we need to go. Now we're starting to think about not just putting up a blue vinyl banner with the skull drop on it and we're serving beer, because that's what we did in 2013 and it worked for us. But like, let's create a gift and an experience for our consumers. Give them the gift of like something that looks fun and exciting, is thought about and creative, and create that next level connection and experience. Yeah, so that's it. Any questions?
How many areas is the beer being distributed in?
Yep. I can't remember how many states we're in because I'm standing in front of 50 people and I'm not nervous, but I can't remember that. We're in Ohio, Kentucky, 6. Thank you so much. We're in 6. So I would say in the beer industry, Rhinegeist has a reputation for being very tight on our footprint and trying to go very deep where we're at. And that's kind of our strategy for whatever's coming up in the next, I don't know, 90 days, is we want to be deep, we want to be beloved where we are, and design plays a role in that, is to create these deeper experiences, and we do spend more money doing that stuff. And the reason why is we don't want to just be like another thing that people can walk away from. That's part of the strategy of the company.
When you come up with like the Graphic Village lager, the new beer, so when you come up with that concept, how long is it from concept to on the shelf? So obviously the cans have to be printed, but so you decide as a group or Brian and whatever doing.
I mean, the biggest challenge in our lead time is can production process. So we work with Althoff, and they also make cans for like Budweiser, so we're like, can you please not fire us? Or, that's the biggest thing in the lead time. But I mean, Cheetah was something that happened like in 2 weeks, We try not to do that. One of the things that we're a lot better about as a team is like time management software for all the designers, where we resource everybody out to 35 hours a week, because 35 turns into 40, and we want people to go home at 5. And that all feeds into our production process as well, where, I think we figure, we've done this before, we can plan it out, and, we can do this in a way that's humane. It keeps people fresh to be creative, which is what we want and demand. I was looking for one of them to laugh at that, but they didn't.
How often do you and the creative team consult or communicate with the brew team on what the different beers that are coming out, what goes into them, the hops and stuff, and do you pull inspiration from that in the designs, or is it just solely like on the name?
I would say moving forward, so there's the cultural aspect of what a brewery is. Let me see how to answer this. I would say historically, brewers brew beer and it shows up and it just like people buy it and drink it and they love it. And it's like we're kind of the ones saying, well, there's this thing called consumerism and things like that. So I think there's more of a partnership between marketing and the production side to sort of, we're placing bigger bets because we're a bigger company, and to understand, well, your idea, like, is that going to scale and is there a market for it? So you see more of that kind of back and forth, like, as we go forward. I would love to have more consumer research about this, but like, I don't know that we always get credit for like how cool we are, like and I don't mean cool like, oh, they're cool and their cans look cool, but I mean cool like the story of the company is really cool, right? It's going to be an employee-owned company in a time when that is not popular. Our owners could have cashed out and become orders of magnitude richer than they are, but they're cool guys that are like, we're millionaires. It's good. That's good enough. And they believe in things like us, the employees, like actually being the ones to benefit from all of this. And I think that's really cool. And I don't think people always know that about us. I think I worry that people bucket us in with, oh, they're just one of those big breweries, those big craft breweries. And we're not. We're driven by real people that are cool people and interesting people. And I'm excited about like telling those kinds of stories. I think we are proud of ourselves, but we're still trying to like push ourselves, and I just always felt like there wasn't any like in-house jobs in Cincinnati that felt like working at Adidas or Nike or something. And like, how could we create that kind of thing, but in beer, where design isn't just about execution, it's about like actually driving business forward, and designers and creatives and marketing people are treated as like, really smart people and not just people to get stuff done. I guess. So we're just going to keep building into that.
So what's on the horizon? What are you all excited about? What's coming down the pike?
I'm just excited, like we have a really great team in place from a design standpoint. We're really good at doing this work. So we just want to do more, better stuff. I mean, that's just, we know each other now and we all know how to work together. But, I think it's just about listening to our people and seeing where they want to go, and trying to create opportunities for people to go do it. And then, obviously moving into employee ownership is meaningful from the company in a spiritual way. And I think that makes us different and it's interesting. So. Cool. All right. Thanks for coming out.